Now we move on to our second energy system that used during exercise, which is known as an anaerobic glycolysis energy system. Okay, so you can see actually what type of activity or sports that is used an aerobic glycolysis energy system. Anaerobic glycolysis is actually the process of taking carbohydrates in the body and putting it through a series of chemical reactions that release through energy to rephosphorylate ADP and reform ATP. The final product of this series of chemical reactions is often referred to as a lactic acid. So this energy system is often called the lactic acid systems. In reality, lactic acid is a weak acid, and under normal conditions in the body is rapidly dissociated, separating into the lactate molecule and a hydrogen ion. So this is the chemical reaction. So it would therefore be more accurate to use the term lactic energy system. However, in exercise physiology, the term anaerobic glycolysis is also widely used. In this text, the term anaerobic glycolysis energy system is used to identify the biochemical pathway involving the conversion of glucose to lactate in contracting muscle under what we call as anaerobic conditions. The term glycolysis, not anaerobic glycolysis, is always used in most biochemistry textbooks. Carbohydrates will be covered in much greater detail in our next lecture, but a summary is needed at this point as background for understanding anaerobic glycolysis. Virtually, all carbohydrates consumed are converted to and used as glucose or are stored as glycogen in muscles and liver for later use. So glycogen is a large molecule composed of many glucose molecules linked together. And glycolysis is the breakdown of glucose through a specific series of chemical steps to rephosphorylate ADP and form ATP. So when the starting point is glycogen, this process is called as glycogenolysis, which is lysis means separate. Oxygen is not required for these chemical reactions to proceed, so glycolysis is one of the anaerobic energy system. Knowledge of the details of glycolysis is important for a thorough understanding of sports nutrition. But however, at this point in discussion, the important details and concepts have been condensed as I mentioned here. For now, the simplified schematic will be used to develop an understanding of the fundamental concept of glycolysis. A detail you can find in anywhere, yang you dah belajar waktu XPM or also in your biochem class that illustrate the specific chemical reactions that occur, the names of the intermediate compound and also the cofactor involved. But now kita akan tengok secara general sahajalah. So glucogen glycogen to glucose to pyruvic acid or pyruvate, and without the oxygens, then it becomes converted to lactate or lactic acid. Okay. So beginning with glucose, kalau kita tengok kan, kalau kita imbau balik the schematic of an anaerobic glycolysis, they begin with glucose. So 2 out of the first 3 reactions require ATP. 2 out of the first 3 reactions, daripada 3 tu, 2 yang daripada first tu, it requires ATP. So they require the input of energy for the reaction to proceed. In the first step, energy and a phosphate group from an ATP will be added and is added to what we call glucose to form the glucose 6-phosphate, 6-GGP. And this is one of the notable glycolytic intermediate compound. So glucose is a compound that contains 6 carbons, as we know, 6 carbon molecules, And in the fourth step, okay, dalam fourth step, dia akan split into 3 carbon molecule. So after a side step reaction to DHAP or dihydroxyacetone phosphate, the 3 carbon molecules are identical. So the remaining reactions of glycolysis are duplicated. So in the sixth reaction here, what happened, the sufficient energy is released to phosphorylate ADP into ATP. This is one of the reactions and that is repeated. So 2 ATP are produced at this point. Dia repeated. So 2 ATP akan terhasil. In the ninth reactions, the same things occur. So 2 additional ATP are produced. So dia jadi 2 ini 2 dah jadi 4. The result of this ninth reaction is the production of pyruvate, which is this pyruvate is very important intermediate compound. In anaerobic glycolysis, the pyruvate then proceed through the final chemical reactions to what we call as a lactate. So glycolysis produce 4 ATP, but 2 ATP are used in the process. So the final net ATP production from anaerobic glycolysis is 2 ATP. So if we notice that if the beginning point of the reaction is glycogen, okay, the pathway skips the first reaction that requires the use of an ATP, and the reaction beginning with the glycogen does directly to glucose 6-phosphate. Therefore, when glycogenolysis, that is the breakdown of glycogen, is used instead of glycolysis, that is breakdown of glucose, 4 ATP are produced. You can see here. Okay, so instead of the glucose, so the glycogen, glycogenolysis, 4 ATP are produced, and only one is used in the process. So the final or net ATP production is 3 ATP. Okay. Okay. Again, when the glycogenolysis is used instead of glycolysis, 4 ATP are produced and only one is used in the process. So the final or net product is 3 ATP. Glycogenolysis is obviously more energetically efficient, and in fact, exercise muscle will generally use stored glycogen in preference to glucose because the energy yield is higher compared to the glucose. This will help during exercise, but the ATP that is not used when glycogen is broken down during exercise is used eventually when glucose is stored as a glycogen during rest or recovery. Okay, given the number of what we call chemical steps, it is readily apparent that anaerobic glycolysis will produce ATP more slowly than the one-step creatinine phosphate system. Anaerobic glycolysis is a relatively fast acting energy system. However, and becomes the preferred or predominant systems to supply energy during high intensity, or what we call as during repeated exercise lasting approximately 1 to 2 minutes. The overall speed of glycolysis and the subsequent rate of ATP replenishment are primarily governed by the activity of PFK, what we call as the rate of limiting enzyme. The body has considerable amount of carbohydrate energy in the form of blood glucose and muscle glycogen. So unlike the creatine phosphate system, the anaerobic glycolysis energy system they rarely limited by repeated energy stores. However, in terms of the disadvantage of this energy system is they increase the acidity. There is decline in pH within the muscle cells that occurs when anaerobic glycolysis is used at a high rate, as occurs during moderately high to high intensity exercise. Because the acidity is a result of very high rate of metabolism, it is referred to as a metabolic acidosis. If this acidosis occurs in exercise muscle, the drop in pH can result in decrease in activity of key metabolic enzymes and can interfere directly with the process of force production, resulting in muscle fatigue. Muscle akan rasa penat. So when exercise at high intensity, this metabolic acidosis results in muscle fatigue in approximately 1 to 2 minutes. So the duration of this energy system is said to be 1 or 2 minutes. Anaerobic glycolysis is utilized only carbohydrate as a fuel of source and can replace ATP rapidly during moderately high to high intensity exercise. It begins to function at the onset of high intensity exercise, but it becomes predominant energy system after the 5 to 10 seconds 5 to 10 seconds when the creatine phosphate energy system begins to reach its limit. So 5 to 10 seconds dia akan guna creatine phosphate energy system. So after that they will replace with the anaerobic glycolysis system. Okay. So to return to the light controller analogy, kalau kita patah balik pada analogy yang saya beritahu pada awal-awal tadi. Okay, after 5 to 10 seconds, the dimmer switch is turned down on the creatine phosphate energy system and turned up on the anaerobic glycolysis energy system. If used continuously at a high rate, anaerobic glycolysis remains the predominant energy system for 1 to 2 minutes or longer if the activity is intermittent. So what types of exercise or activities make this description? Okay, for example, long sprint such as 400 meter sprint in the track, or repeated high intensity sprints such as the intermittent sprint by a soccer or basketball player, or repeated high force activities such as 10 to 15 repetition of weightlifting, or what we call as a repeated intervals such as 50 to 100 meter swimming intervals. Okay, to summarize, the characteristic of the anaerobic glycolysis energy system. Number 1, it has 18 chemical steps or reactions and 6 are repeated. So it have a 12 chemical compounds, 11 enzymes, and it involves what we call a rate limiting enzyme, phosphofructokinase or PFK, as mentioned just now. It is fast, but not as fast as the creatine phosphate. Kalau kita tumis tu 5 to 10 seconds, this is about 1 to 2 minutes. 2 ATP produced via glucose and 3 ATP produced via glycogen. And it is an anaerobic, it's a 1 to 2 minute duration. And fatigue is also associated with decrease in pH, which cause a metabolic acidosis and the predominant energy system in high intensity exercise, for example, sustained or repeated sprint.